Welcome back to episode 4 of Got Your Trade, featuring me, PescaroDB, and my boy, RockyBTrades. It's been a minute since our last episode, I think like 2 weeks or something like that. Um, Vincent was on vacation. I have just been busy with work and some Call of Duty stuff and whatnot, so the show was on a little bit of a break, and now it's actually me that's going to be going on vacation, leaving on Friday for that, and I'll be gone for a week. So hopefully there won't be as much of a delay there until our next episode. But a bit of an update: we did get the show to be on audio platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. I think there's a few other ones available as well. So now it won't just be YouTube that these are uploaded to, but if you just want to listen rather than see our beautiful faces, you can do that with Spotify and Apple and whatnot. But Vincent, first of all, tell us about your trip. Give us a little rundown of that, and then let's dive right into our topics. Obviously, we got a lot to talk about with stocks, and then the sports contracts, and then of course wrapping things up with the big acquisition of Microsoft purchasing Activision.
For sure. Well, welcome back, guys. It's good to be back and on for episode 4 of Got Your Trade. We're going to talk some sports and the stock market, but just took a little bit of a break, like 10 days or so. I went back to Lynchburg, Virginia. That's where I went to college. Just had a good time. Did some hiking. I was around a lot of nature, trying to be on my phone a little less, and it was just nice to get away, take a break. But now I'm happy to be back. To end the year strong and then just chop it up and let's talk about the stock market and just exciting things, and yeah, happy to be back.
Hell yeah, man. So first and foremost, D Hezzy, what's good of y'all? You'll appreciate you. Mimicry,
Yo,
what's
what's
good?
good?
What's good? All right, so first things first, man. Obviously, I would say like right before you left, or right as you were getting ready to leave, technology seemed to be the one sector that was like popping off. Apple was hitting like 198, and a
Yeah,
ton of other like stocks in the tech sector were really seeming to be the ones that were popping off. Uh, and then more recently, I feel like we've seen the healthcare sector kind of pop off. We had Pfizer had some movement, and other stocks like that, Johnson and Johnson, um,
yep.
Merck, all those similar names. And then there was at one point we saw, I think during our last episode we touched on it, but Rivian was doing very well. So that's the EV sector. What have
Yep.
you been seeing as of late? Just overall trends. What stocks have you've obviously had a hell of a month. For those of you who don't keep up with Vincent on Twitter at RockyBTrades, this dude has been having W after W this month. I think it might be on pace for his best ever month, which is saying a
Appreciate it,
lot
man.
because he's had a ton of success. But yeah, tell us about what you've been seeing, just overall with the different sectors and where you've had your success.
Yeah, well, it is earning season, and I think like 140 out of the 500 companies in the S&P 500 all have earnings this week. The pretty big ones, you got Coca-Cola, Microsoft, Visa, Google, big companies. And the one thing that I've noticed is that tech has obviously been the strongest sector by far. All these companies are just going for highs. The whole AI possibilities that can be provided by those companies in the future. Um, so one thing I've noticed is that's really led the whole entire rally this whole entire year. And I think you're starting to now see a little bit of catch up, like they call it a catch up trade, meaning, okay, everybody who's been long on all these tech names, maybe they need to diversify or look for other potential opportunities that haven't gone yet. And what I've seen is like consumer staples have been starting to get added, and those are like Procter and Gamble, Coca-Cola, Walmart, stocks like that. They're also a little bit more defensive too because these are all cash cow companies. They make a ton. They pay a dividend. Um, and you're starting to see like banks and healthcare go as well. So it's kind of an interesting time right now because Microsoft, they just had earnings last night. They crushed it for the quarter, but they got it down a little bit. So the stock was down like 4% today, nothing crazy. Google beat today. They were up like 7%. Apple and Amazon, the two big dominoes, are going to be next week.
Playmaker, thank you for
See what
that follow,
happens
brother.
there. But pretty exciting time. A lot of catalysts today. Jerome Powell, they're raising rates again by 25 basis points. Inflation is currently sitting at 3%, but apparently they said that they're not going to get that. Their goal is 2%. They wanted that by the end of this year, but they said that they're not going to get that till the end, like 2025, which that seems weird to me. If we went, last year around this time, I mean, I think we were 7, 8%. We're at 3% now. To go down one more percent, and it's going to take that long. It'll be interesting to see how they combat that. But just been a lot of observing and just trying to take advantage of sector rotation has really helped me, especially this quarter or this month.
Yes, for sure. And I mean, another thing aside from like sector rotation that it seems has really worked out for you is also just, and something you've been preaching on again on Twitter and stuff is the making use of different strategies, the swing trading, the news trading, not just getting when you're doing options, not just doing, what do you call it?
Like shares.
Or like you're not just doing what's it called when it goes up again. I don't know why I'm blanking on that word.
Oh, calls.
Calls, yes. You're not
Yeah,
just doing calls, or you're not just doing
Yeah.
puts. You're
Yeah.
you're mixing it up. You're doing what you see, and diversifying your strategies like that has been super helpful and a key to your success. I mean, what do you have to say
Sure.
for people who maybe consider the idea that you got to stick to one particular strategy and that's the key to success? What do you have to say to those people?
Yeah, well, obviously, when you're in the beginning phase, you do want to find that strategy that works for you. Try to be the best at that. But if you're an advanced trader or this is your full-time career, you obviously would hope to have multiple tools in your bag, I would say, because, each market, each quarter, each month, there's going to be different opportunities, different seasons to take advantage of certain things. So I would say is definitely, stay diligent. When you think you have it figured out, you never do because the stock market's one of those things. You can always learn something new every single day. So I would say continue to ask questions. For me, I'm a big visual learner, so watching YouTube videos. I've done a lot more option selling this month, and just trading shares. And primarily, I've only really traded calls and puts for most of my career, but being able to do other things has helped me if maybe I don't think options are the best type of trade at this point. Maybe shares or selling options or swinging options is better for me, and it's been pretty beneficial. So yeah, I would say just continue to improve and get better every single day.
Yeah, for sure. So I was about to say we got a follow while you were talking before. That's our 69th follower over here
I'll
on
just end
Kick.
it.
So might have to just end the channel now and leave it at that. I got people commenting about how I'm able to keep a straight face while you're talking. Look, this is our thing, man. We're good friends. He's giving out this great information. I learn from him while we're having these conversations. We talk about this stuff off stream and off
We do.
off the show as well. So I mean, yes, Playmaker, you are the 69th follow, and I don't know how to reward you, but you deserve a reward. And I see that
No
you
more
said you're from
follows.
Twitter and you're a big fan, so we appreciate you. Yeah, no more
Oh,
follows on the
what's up?
channel.
What's up, bro? Thanks for coming on, Playmaker.
But yeah, I
That's
mean,
fun.
it's been a crazy month. I mean, even just from my end, like again, I don't trade on the daily like Vincent does, and most of my stuff is just like long-term holding and investing, but just seeing all the different stocks that have been skyrocketing this month. I mean, uh, Carnival and travel stocks have been having a big boost. Obviously, like I said, Apple, their biggest thing was when they announced a AI competitor to Chat GPT or whatever it's called, OpenAI, uh,
Yep.
which obviously that's like all Apple has to do to be successful. Honestly, they don't have to be the first. They don't have to be the first to anything anymore because the iPhone essentially reinvented the entire wheel for how cell phones work in our culture. And ever since then, I mean, they can be second or third to some sort of new technology, but because it's Apple, it's gonna
Yeah.
dominate, and it's gonna cause that stock to go for a ride, if you will. So, I mean, it's just been a crazy month. It's been very cool to see, and I tip it to you for, like you said, you were away, getting outside more, not as much time on your phone, and you're still like able to hit some home runs and even just some
Yeah,
singles. Because I mean, it's not always about the big play. It's just about it's about living to fight another day, if you will, and
for
just
sure.
stacking them W's. So it's been really cool to see. Um, and I don't know if there was anything else you wanted to touch on with stocks for this episode specifically, but um, it's been, again, it's just typical what you've been able to do this month.
Appreciate it, Drew. Means a lot. Just we're working really hard, and honestly, it's been nice taking less trades, but just being more concentrated with either the size of the trade or just the thesis and how long I hold a certain trade. That's been really nice, and just being patient and letting those things work out. Not getting that instant gratification, and like you said, like taking the singles when I get them, even if it's a $300 day or $500 day, or keeping the losses small. But then when the home run trade happens, I had last week Apple AI news, one of my biggest trades in my career. That was the home run, and that can really help add a nice little boost to what was already a pretty good month. So really happy, and I guess we can go to our next topic, which
I was gonna
is
say
contracts.
yeah, I was about to move into that, but then I did see a question from chat, so I wanted to make sure we got to that. So first of all, Mimicry said, "So is Rocky a day trader?" That is correct. My boy Vincent here, RockyBTrades.
Yes, sir.
He is a day trader, very good one, hell of a day trader at that, and so highly suggest following him on Twitter and on other socials because then you can keep up with what he's doing. He's also one of my best friends, so I'm always going to vouch for the guy. But yes, he is a day trader. And then Playmaker said, would love to hear your overall approach, Rocky, as well as size and trimming.
Yeah, so my overall approach is, every single day, I get up probably 2 hours before market opens, 7:38 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'll scan through the news because I am a news trader first, so I'll see, what's gapping up or gapping down, what has relative strength versus weakness. Should I keep a note on that? See what pre-market's doing, see what the overall S&P and QQQ are doing. And take note of that. I usually draw out my levels on charts the night before, so I'll go through like the daily chart, the hourly chart, the higher time frames to see where stocks historically tend to react, either rejecting or bouncing off a certain level. Um, and then coming into the day, if there is opportunities to day trade, I'll take them. So I've actually been day trading less. Like I only really day trade news nowadays, or off open plays where it's like there was a earnings reaction and maybe it didn't get the move it should have, but the earnings were good or bad, and then I'll take a day trade because there's still that news, that those fundamentals that can drive the stock higher or lower. So that's the day trade side of things. And then really for swinging, it's all about having a thesis. Like think about a week ago, I was like, I'm really starting to see some rotation into like different sectors. Just be with how I could see like volume starting to get accumulated. So it's like, okay, I have a trade Procter and Gamble this year. I'm going to take this stock and just keeping it simple. When I added the stock, it was 149.50. I'm big into psych levels. I bought September contracts, and for some reason, people like to buy stocks like at the psych levels. Like they'd rather buy it at 150 exactly than like 150.43 or something like that, right? And with my thesis, Proctor's seen another $4 pop from that spot, and I'm up like 90% on my September calls. Just having a thesis, holding it, and believing in your conviction has really helped. And then with sizing, it really depends. I mean, it's all relative to your port. I can't really speak for you because I don't know what your portfolio size is, but for swings, I'll go a little heavier, and then day trade because I have more time. Time is always against you in options. With day trades, I'm gonna go a little less unless it's news. If it's news, I'll go heavier or regular size because I know the stock is going to move. If it's a day trade, I'll probably just scale back the size because there is more risk, time's against you, and things like that. But that's basically it. Doing some option selling, some swinging, and just trying to stay balanced. That's what I've been doing.
Yeah, so to answer another question from chat, Mimicry said, "What is QQQ?" So I can answer that. Essentially, anything that Vincent's talking about, or if I'm talking about it, when we say SPY or just the S&P 500 or QQQ, for example, these are stock market indexes. Pretty
Mm-hmm.
much, QQQ is specifically for the technology sector, if I'm not mistaken. Um, and so it's going to be tracking the direction, the overall direction of the market that the top, let's say, 50 or 75 traded stocks within that sector are trading at. So S&P 500 is literally it's the top, isn't it like the top 500 stocks like
Yeah.
overall?
In
Um,
America. Yep.
in the U.S. exactly, and then so QQQ is tech stocks, and it's
Yeah.
just a sector or a index that tracks that sector.
Just tech. Yep. And it's 30. So like QQQ is Nasdaq, which is like Apple, Amazon. Everybody's heard of these companies. Google. Even if you don't even know about the stock market, you've heard of these companies. And it's just concentrated on tech. S&P 500. Those two are really the main like gauges of like what the overall market's doing. Um, so
Yeah, and he said okay because I have heard of SPY and the S&P 500, but I hadn't heard of QQQ before. Yeah, so I was gonna say the only time you might have heard of it if you're not like big into stocks and stuff, there was one March Madness where like I feel like every single commercial was something about Invesco QQQ, and like
yeah,
the
that's
commercials had you
insane.
thinking it was like a product, like a car or like
Yeah.
a new software or something like that, but then it ended up just being a commercial for a stock index or index fund or whatever you want to call it. And so yeah, I mean that's pretty much what it is. And then Playmaker, and we'll make this the last question, and then we'll definitely segue into sports because we got a lot more to talk about. But Playmaker wanted to know, so on your Proctor calls, what would you have done if it went down first? And he said, reason I'm asking is I'm in Roblox from 42 at 40 now. Chart looks great, but wondering if I should have a tighter SL, I believe is what he's.
Stop loss. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so to answer your question, you always got to be prepared for when the trade goes against you. The stock market's kind of like the casino. It is designed to make you lose. If you don't have an edge or like an exit plan, or if things go to, they go bad, you gotta kind of know, okay, what am I willing to risk on the trade? What am I willing to, you have to be strict with your rules and how you follow them. So if something goes down for me, as a swing trader first, as long as I have time, I'm okay with it. If you're buying weekly options and the stock goes down $2, you're down 60%. If you're buying 2 months out, the stock goes down $2, you're down 20%, which is 25, maybe 30%, a little bit, way more manageable. So I would say the first thing is buy time. Um, and you got to work on your entries, I would say. If the Proctor went down, I would have made sure, okay, if it closes below this key level, I'm going to cut it, or my thesis is invalidated, I'll cut it. But I had two things. I had time and my thesis. The thesis was still on point. The chart was looking constructive, and I was getting in before um, that rotation. So I would say, um, you gotta kind of have a plan. Are you willing to? Are you gonna? And I would say as a swinger too, don't go like your full position like right away. Give yourself room to add, because as a swinger, you don't need to be full size right away. You can give yourself room to take another entry if it still makes sense. So no problem.
Yeah, I was gonna say, look at that. Your advice, bro. This is why we love to talk about this stuff because it's cool to see how it can help other people, and it's especially in real time like this when we're live. But then also anyone that watches this later on or listens to it or whatever. This is the type of content that we want to make, and we really enjoy it. But I think that covers all the stuff we want to talk about with stocks for this episode. We're now going to move into sports, where we're going to have an overall general conversation on some recent contract signings. Specifically, we're going to start with one that I guess is a little more personal to me because I am a Celtics fan. But I want to start with your opinion on it first, Vincent. What did you think of the contract that Jaylen Brown signed most recently? So, I mean, just to give a brief overview, it was a 5-year supermax contract. He signed with the Celtics to stay there for at least another 5 years. And I believe the dollar amount was $304 million total, paying out roughly $60 million per season, which again sounds astronomical. But I want to hear what, like, maybe your first opinion was on it, and then maybe where you're at now with it, if anything has changed.
Yeah. Well, first, I mean, I want to say congrats to him. I mean, that's obviously amazing for himself and his entire family. I mean, he's going to set up, I mean, 20, 30 generations. I mean,
Yeah.
literally, his whole bloodline forever is set, as long as it's invested and spent properly or whatever. But in terms of, like, the player to get it, Jaylen Brown is definitely a top 15 player, top 20 for sure. I would say he's in that tier of, like, a Paul George. He's better than Bam Adebayo. Like, he's a good wing player, and the best position to have a good player is a wing. So he is a valuable player. There's no doubt about it. The only thing is like, you just think about it, because I know he's been in trade talks for the past like 2 or 3 years. I feel like, or at least a year or two, and I've even heard him say, like, sometimes, like, he hasn't felt the most comfortable in Boston. I'm sure you probably heard talks about it, but I know obviously the team loves him. He's been to 5 Eastern Conference Finals, all NBA player, multiple time All-Star. He averages like 24, 25 games, shoot threes, athletic. I would just say, if I'm a Boston fan, there are nights he's better than Jason Tatum. I swear. If he could get like Tatum's handle, or just work on his left hand a little bit more, I mean, it's 1A, 1B with who's best on the team, honestly. Because there's nights where Jason Tatum disappears and he's the one putting up 35 to help the team out. So congrats to them. That's just the future of the NBA. I mean, NFL, all these sports really that are growing. So it's cool to see. A lot of people are probably like, him of all people to get it. I mean, Mike Conley was also the highest paid player too at one point in the NBA. Not as much buzz, and he only made one All-Star team. So Jaylen Brown deserves it. Celtics got a good one. Now they just got to get over the top, and he's going to probably be locked in, because I know Tatum for sure is definitely going to be the next one to get paid in like a year or so. But what are your thoughts on it as a Celtics fan?
Yeah, I mean, so first and foremost, just being a fan, seeing that our, second best player and now longest tenured player with Marcus Smart being traded, which is really weird to think about, that Jaylen Brown is now the longest tenured Celtic currently on the team. But no, I mean, first and foremost, though, yeah, I was thrilled that he was staying, because I know there had been trade talks and all these people who try to be like, Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum can't win together and they need to go and get someone else, and I wasn't buying any of that, and especially after they went and got that Kristaps trade done and brought in a legit. Now, I mean, this is a legitimate big three, with Kristaps being that third option. The dollar amount, again, would have scared anyone away, unless we were talking about Steph Curry or maybe Giannis or someone of that caliber. But the fact of the matter is, with these type of max contracts, the player has to hit a threshold to be eligible for it, which is to make an All-NBA team, which Jaylen Brown was second team All-NBA this past season. And so once you do that, you're eligible for that deal, which is I want to say it's a 35% of the salary cap is what the contract automatically is. And like you were kind of insinuating, both the NBA and NFL and some of these other leagues are just on fire from a business perspective, and year after year we're having the salary cap continue to rise. And I think for Jaylen Brown specifically, it was right place, right time. He's shown improvement every single year he's been in the league. No one can deny that. He definitely has his weaknesses. Sometimes his three-point shot's not the best. Sometimes, or most of the time, he cannot go left for shit, and it costs him a lot. He definitely needs to be working on his handles this offseason, and just overall, like, that is his biggest glaring weakness as a player. But people also try to act like this guy didn't just drop 27 points per game, 7 rebounds, 4 assists, and be one of the better defenders at the wing position in the NBA. Like, he had a phenomenal season, and they all kind of fell apart in the playoffs. Granted, he had an injury, like, outside of basketball. He got injured literally right before the playoffs started, and then he re-aggravated that injury, I want to say the first game of the Miami series, the Eastern Conference Finals. So I'm sure that played a role in some of his struggles throughout the playoffs. I'm not trying to cover up for him. Obviously, it would have been huge for his career and his what do you call it, like how people view him if he had stepped up in Game 7 of the Eastern Conference Final, especially right after Tatum went out on the first possession. Sadly, that did not happen. They ended up getting blown out after being down 0-3 in the series and bringing it all the way back. And that's just how it went. But overall, like I said, we're going to see a ton more of these contracts being signed because the salary cap is just going to continue to rise year after year for the foreseeable future. And so, literally, it's just going to come down to whoever's next available for a Supermax contract is going to become, the next top paid player in the NBA because that's just the nature of the business. And then once we get to a point where maybe we plateau and the salary cap isn't rising every year, now it's going to be more of, okay, this guy's getting paid more than this guy because of a talent disparity and not just he was eligible for this contract and the salary cap at this time was insane. So I think people kind of overreact. Like, to conclude things on Jaylen Brown specifically, and then we can move into like the NFL contracts because there's been a lot of those as well. I think a lot of people jumped and reacted to highest paid player in NBA history, even though it is a fact at the moment. We're going to be seeing a lot of that. And I think the fact of the matter is he's signed at a deal that we all knew he was going to get, whether it was from Boston. Technically he could only get Supermax from Boston because I think that's where like bird rights kick in and stuff. But if it wasn't with us, he was going to sign a max contract anywhere else. That's just the level of player that he is. And so I think that's really all there is to it. There's not much more you can say. You can dwell on the $60 million per year average and all this other stuff, but that's just how the contract worked out. And obviously, it's not affecting Boston's ability to have talent. They still have Tatum. Yeah. They're still going to be able to sign Tatum. He'll be due for the same contract next offseason.
Probably more.
So he'll probably get even more. And they just signed Porzingis he's going to be on the team for the next 3 years. Still got Derek White, Robert Williams, Al Horford. I mean, they're still going to be competing for Eastern Conference, and I think they got to obviously get over that hump and bring that 18th banner home. I think that's the goal, obviously, but this contract did not impact the team's ability to be able to sign talent around them and continue being a championship contender. So a little bit of overreaction overall, but I mean, that's just people maybe don't know the business side of sports as much, so they don't realize that the only reason the players are getting paid this much is because the league is making this much money and has it to distribute to the players and the teams and all that. So, sure. But I mean, we've been seeing some crazy stuff too in the NFL. I mean, I think during our last episode, we were still debating where DeAndre Hopkins was going to end up. Yeah. He ended up signing with the Tennessee Titans, chose them over the New England Patriots. So, sucks to see for me, but it is what it is. People are joking that that's where receivers go to die careers go to die because plenty very talented wide receivers have gone to Tennessee and then fizzled out. Randy Moss, Andre Johnson, Jerry Rice, if I'm not mistaken, but I might be tripping on that one. But there's been quite a few. Julio Jones was the other one.
Oh, yeah.
Most recently. But that was obviously big news, but I would say more recently that the biggest piece of news we've had out of the NFL has been the running back position and the contract situation with players like Saquon Barkley and Josh Jacobs. And, um, we've been seeing what looked like we might have our first, like, roster or, like, position group go on strike in the NFL. It looked like for a minute there that Saquon Barkley and these other running backs were just going to straight up not show up to training camp and potentially not show up at all for the whole season. Saquon ended up getting a deal done that didn't seem much better than uh,
Yeah,
the franchise tag he signed or
yeah,
didn't sign. But
yeah. I mean,
but what do you think's going on with that specifically with the running back position, and then
yeah,
also just like the quarterback market too, is the value of those contracts has skyrocketed. So I mean, do you think
yeah.
those kind of play into each other?
I would say, I mean, I feel pretty bad for the running backs nowadays because it's one of those positions where, yes, there's plenty of talent. I mean, you can find a great running back in the seventh round, just like the Chiefs did, or like a fourth rounder like Alvin Kamara. These guys really do pan out. I mean, what was Ramondre, like a third round pick too?
I think third or
I
fourth
think,
round. Yeah.
yeah, and he's a stud. But the thing that's terrible is they're not just running backs anymore. I feel well, the top ones. I'm talking about the ones that are like great for fantasy, the three down backs. I mean, the three down backs, they're blocking too, they're catching passes. They obviously take the most hits, so they
Yep.
have the shortest career span by default, with the nature of the position. So when they perform really well for multiple seasons in a row, and they're still struggling to get some long term security, I mean that really does suck because I get it. Quarterback's the most important position in football. But when you have Daniel Jones making 40 million a year and Saquon is trying to just get 10 to 12 a year and he can't even get that outside of a franchise tag or a 1 year deal, I mean, it's sad to see because we all know he's the Giants' best player, definitely the best offensive player. You take him away, they're definitely not going to the playoffs. Daniel Jones is definitely not looking like the quarterback he does. So feel for that position. It sucks. Like Austin Eckler, I don't think should be making 6 million, but then like Mike Williams, he gets hurt a lot, and he's making 20
Yep.
to 25. I mean, that just doesn't make sense. That the running back position I think is very very undervalued. I also think tight ends too. Um, Kelsey's making 13, 14, but these receivers are making 30. I mean,
Yep.
Kelsey is a top five receiving option in his own right. He just labels as a tight end, and he blocks too. So interesting to see. All in sports in general. I mean, all these contracts, the amount of money people are getting, it's going up a ton. So I think they got to figure out a way maybe to, help these running back. It just sucks because like Todd Gurley got a big contract. He flamed out. Zeke, same thing. So that's probably what's turning these teams away in a salary cap league where it's like, okay, we just cannot spend like 15 to 20 million at this position. There's other needs. So I'm interested to see like what they're going to do in the future of the running back position. But what are your thoughts on the overall market for running backs and just quarterbacks as a whole?
Yeah. I mean, first of all, I think if anything is going to substantially change at this point to where these running backs are going to get their true market value, you're gonna need some of these other positions, such as your quarterback or your receivers, to you know be a team player, if you will, and you don't have to go and do what Aaron Rodgers just did, which honestly surprised me because
Yeah,
he's not
I'm
been known to
surprised.
be the type to be a team player
Yeah,
in this sense. But I'm gonna give credit where credit's due. He just freed up, I think it was like 35 million over the next 2 years
that's
on
a
his
lot.
contract to
Mhm.
help the Jets get better. And I mean, they were looking like a pretty solid squad going into this season when they added him, and now they can just get even better.
Mhm.
Um, you're gonna need to see a lot more of that from quarterbacks on these teams where they have some very strong running back play. Uh, which is funny that the Jets like did that because they are not necessarily one of those teams. Like, yeah, like they have Brees Hall, who ended up getting hurt as a rookie, but showed a lot
Yeah.
of potential. I think their other running backs, Michael Carter.
Mhm. Yep.
But Ryan Tannehill, like, I'm sorry, he does not need to be making 30 or 35 million per season when he's got Derrick Henry on his team. If Ryan Tannehill was throwing 5,000 yards and 50 touchdowns, give him whatever the hell he wants. But he's not doing that. And same thing with Daniel Jones. It's very obvious how he plays when Saquon's on the field versus when he isn't. And I will say, I do think Daniel Jones in general took a step forward this past season, getting the offensive coordinator from the Bills and having him become the head coach. I think that paid dividends because we saw how he developed Josh Allen. Josh Allen was not a very good quarterback his first 2 or 3 years. People tend to forget that. But he got Brian Dable to be his offensive coordinator and has obviously skyrocketed and now is considered easily a top 5 quarterback in the league. And I'm not saying Daniel Jones is on that same path by any means, but he definitely has taken steps forward overall in his game. But let's be real. I mean, Saquon is the key to that entire offense, the run game and the pass game. And I just don't think, like, if you're being a team player and you're the quarterback, like, yes, the offense, quote-unquote, goes through you, but you need to realize, like, if you want any chance of success, you need those people around you that are making you a good quarterback. You need them to be getting paid and to be satisfied. And Saquon should not have had to fight this hard to get paid. Josh Jacobs should not have to be threatening to sit out an entire season to get paid by the Raiders because he's also a huge part of their offense. And yeah, I mean, I know they went and got Devontae Adams, but it's not like their quarterback situation's great. They have Garoppolo, who could still be decent, don't get me wrong, but you know, it sucks that these guys are having to fight so hard to get pay that is worth their value. I will say, you know, thinking about it, you brought up really good points about how guys like Ezekiel Elliott, Todd Gurley, those type of guys who did get paid and either injuries derailed them or they just didn't live up to the contract, and that probably hurt the running back market a lot. Another player that comes to mind with that one is Le'Veon Bell. He sat out for an entire season when the Steelers wouldn't pay him. The Jets decided to go ahead and give him a 4-year, $50-something million contract, and he wasn't good. And he didn't finish out that contract, and he's also no longer in the NFL, even though at one point he was arguably the best running back in the league. At least maybe from a fantasy perspective, but you know, so it's a player like that hurts the market because they go and do the whole thing where they're sitting out trying to get their market value, they get it, and then they're not the same player.
And they don't pan out.
And obviously in his case, I think the biggest thing was he sat out an entire year. I think if there's any sport where you cannot sit out an entire season, it's football. Like if you do, I don't care how talented you are, you're gonna it's going to screw you over because football, just as much as it is an athletic game, there's so much mental component to it. And you know, when he's sitting out, he's not sitting on the sideline because he's injured and still taking in everything and being at practice and all that. He's off doing whatever the hell he wants because he didn't get paid, and it's essentially an entirely wasted season. So, I mean, just overall, the whole... I think when you look at the NFL, the quarterback market is starting to get out of control. When, you know, obviously Justin Herbert just got paid his big contract. Joe Burrow is most likely next. And it's funny because, I mean, you saw a guy like Lamar Jackson who's been a league MVP, but because he's more of a running quarterback, it took forever for him to get a long-term deal. I mean, he almost didn't with the Ravens till like last second. But you look at him and you can almost be like, he is the entire offense for the Ravens because if he's not throwing, you know, bombs for touchdowns, he's running for 100+ yards a game, even though they do have a decent running back in J.K. Dobbins. But just overall, I mean, he is a big chunk of that offense, and he even hardly get paid, and he is a quarterback. So I think it says a lot about how the NFL or like the front offices in the NFL view running, like primary running players in general. Uh, and I don't know. I don't know how to feel about that because obviously rules have made the NFL, I guess you could say, softer in terms of like hitting and stuff like that, and for good reasons. I mean, I'm all about player protection. I don't want these guys getting laid out and developing CTE at 25 years old or whatever. But the rules have certainly protected the quarterback position and receiving positions a lot more than running positions, or primary
Yeah.
running positions. So, I mean, I think that's also hurting them in the sense that that's another reason why they're not getting paid even remotely close to the value they're bringing to their offenses at the running back position.
Yeah. There's one more point that I wanted to talk about, and I heard this from a sports talk show. But with nowadays, a college player could get paid with this whole NIL thing. They can get sponsorships or, just be paid to post stuff on their social media accounts, whatever. And the argument was a running back, or if you're taking the fourth round of the NFL, I think you're guaranteed like $1 million or something upon signing. Like, the later in the drafts you go, obviously the less guarantees because, you weren't as high as a pick or whatever that
Right.
looks like. So the argument was like, if you're one of the best running backs in the NFL, like you're pretty good, but you're not like a Bijan Robinson first rounder. Um, could you just play out your whole entire college career, like do that process of, redshirting, playing good? There was this argument where it's like it's going to become an issue if you can make more from being in college as an NIL than just going to the NFL because Isaiah Pacheco, seventh round pick, he's making nothing. And he probably made less than $1 million and he was the Chiefs' best player. And when his deal goes up, which is probably another 2 3 years, I mean, he's going to be 28 years old. Are you going to pay a
Yeah.
28-year-old or 27 years old? Are you going to pay a 27-year-old money when it's like, oh, we can just get another Isaiah Pacheco in the seventh round and we just used him for 4 years. He's a heck of a player. That to me is like, wow. I mean, that's very unfortunate, I would say.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
I think that's the biggest issue you run into with the NFL versus, let's say, the NBA is, think about it, the top players, Wembanyama, for example, people will say he's the hottest prospect since LeBron. Uh, to be determined. It's very possible, but we'll see. But he's coming into the league at 18, 19 years old, getting that first rookie contract, and I mean, number one overall pick, you get a really good chunk of money when you initially sign, but when you're coming into the pros at 18 or 19 years old, considering your rookie deal probably lasts 3 or 4 years, I mean, you're setting yourself up to where you might be signing 2 or 3 max extension contracts throughout your entire career versus the NFL. By the time your rookie deal runs out, most of the time you're already 26, 27 at this point because a lot of them come in uh, and they're 23, 24 years old uh, as rookies. And at that point, I mean, you're only gonna maybe get one max contract in your entire career in the NFL, and if you're a running back, it's even less likely that you will because no one's giving out that kind of money to running backs. So I don't know. I just think it's crazy because there's not nearly as many opportunities to get paid in the NFL as there is in the NBA. But you know, I think the NFL in general has to watch out for what you said with the whole NIL thing because if these players can get paid more to play all 4 years in college, they're gonna figure it out and they're gonna start doing it, and then you're gonna have a real problem on your hands.
Yeah, for sure. So quite the dilemma, but hopefully, they do something to fairly compensate these running backs. I'm not saying they should be paid like quarterbacks, obviously not, but I think the security, because if anybody's going to get CTE, it's going to be the running backs. It's going to
Yep.
be the hard hitters. I mean, it's them. They take the most hits, just nature of the position. So for them to get the least amount of security, plus like just yearly, not the most compared to relative to other positions. I mean, we'll see what the NFL does. I can see how these players are frustrated, but um, I'm not sure. Do we have any other topics to cover?
Yeah, I mean, we're just gonna cover briefly the whole Microsoft
Oh
acquisition,
yeah, yeah.
buying Activision Blizzard. Um, we wanted to cover that mainly because it's been something that has been, in the works for I
For a
think like the
while,
last year or two.
a year and a half, yeah,
That it was like
maybe two
initially
years.
brought up that they were gonna do
Mm-hmm.
it, and then a ton of different courts, uh, the EU, the US, like the FTC and stuff, um, tried to, people were attempting to block the deal from going through. A lot of pushback came from Sony. Obviously, they own PlayStation, and PlayStation has had the not exclusivity, but the favorable uh, deal with Activision specifically for Call of Duty since I'm trying to think of when they got that. I mean, it was like COD Ghosts or Black Ops 3 or something like that. And ever since then, it's been like PlayStation who had first access to new content and stuff like that. Um, and yes, Activision Blizzard has way more games and studios than just Call of Duty, but I feel like Call of Duty ended up being the pretty much the focal point of the deal, because Xbox or Microsoft had been saying that their goal with acquiring Activision was to get the game on more platforms. Currently, you can't play Call of Duty on Nintendo Switch, and I think that's maybe the only other one because you can play it on PC, you can play it on Xbox, you can play it on PlayStation, um, but Xbox or Microsoft said that they intend to make it available on Nintendo consoles, which only sounds like a good thing because I mean it's more access to the title, but obviously Sony did not want to lose their deal. But as it turns out, it looks like Microsoft they won over the courts, at least in the U.S. I think they still got to deal with it in the UK. I think they're still fighting on that end, but uh, I think the coolest aspect of it, I'm not sure if you've been seeing this or paying attention to it, but one of the ripple effects of the deal has been that Microsoft went in and for all of the old Call of Duty games like Modern Warfare 2 from 2009, Black Ops from 2010, Black Ops 2, all these games that were considered like the best in the series and people talk about all the time. If you maybe let's say 6 months ago, if you were like, "Oh, I'm gonna go try to play some multiplayer on that," you'd hop in and either no one would be playing it in general or everyone would be hacking. You wouldn't be able to play it. And because Microsoft is acquiring Activision, they went in and cleaned up a lot of the servers. And all of a sudden, you see Modern Warfare 2 from 2009 has 100,000 plus people playing it right now. Uh, and with Xbox, the way that they have the server set up, you can access those servers from any console between the 360 and the most latest Xbox Series X. So tons of people are flocking to buy these Xbox consoles to go and relive the glory days of older CODs. I just think it's been really cool to see. I love that the deal is getting done and it's going to allow more access to these titles. Obviously, Activision Blizzard is a huge company, a huge producer in gaming. But I don't know if you had seen any of that. But I thought that was like the coolest part. Was all the people going back and getting to relive their glory days on those old games.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely a huge acquisition for sure. I know it's been looming for a while. I remember that news broke probably about a year and a half ago. So for it to finally be coming through, definitely going to be good to see. All the best companies in the world, well, Activision is a pretty big company that they are acquiring, but all the big companies in the world like Google, Meta, Apple, Amazon, they've all made these big like acquisitions over the years, and a couple that come to mind is like I think in like 2013, Meta bought Instagram for like $1 billion.
Yep.
If Instagram was its own publicly traded company, that's probably worth 200 to 300 billion. So it's certain acquisitions like that that can really just help expand the growth. I mean, because at least for me, for Meta, because they actually just had earnings tonight and performed well again. Um, but when I think about social media, I think really about Instagram. I've never really used Facebook and things like that. So it'd be interesting to see like, a big company like Microsoft, they're in everything, acquiring, the biggest gaming company to see how, they, you know, promote really the growth of gaming and tech as a whole. Adding that to their, they have LinkedIn. I mean, Microsoft Teams. I mean, they're just all over the place. Obviously, everybody uses Microsoft Word and PowerPoint and such. So it'll be interesting to see. They can continue to grow the gaming side of it. I think it's exciting because, you have two big brands, combining together, and then those shareholders who are in Activision for a while, in like the 50s, 60s, 70s. I mean, the buyout's 95 a share, so it's a nice little premium you'll get. For anyone who was long that for a while, had to wait a while, but um, definitely exciting for the future of just gaming and tech stocks as a whole.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm glad you brought up that whole thing about all the different like bigger companies that have taken those. I guess I mean I know Activision's established, and when Facebook or Meta acquired Instagram, it was an established company and product at the time. Like it wasn't in
Hmm.
like some alpha or beta phase by any means. But it's still you're taking a big swing when you go and acquire a company that size. It's a lot of money, obviously, but usually it tends to work out as long as you don't make any drastic changes. Another example that kind of came to mind when you said like imagine if Instagram was still like their own publicly traded stock was Google and how they had acquired YouTube. Imagining
Oh, that's
if
one of the biggest
YouTube
ones ever. Oh
was
my gosh.
their own stock. I mean,
Yeah.
it's crazy that some of the when you kind of follow the or you kind of trace back like okay this company who owns it and who owns that and like figuring out who's at the top of the command if you will of who owns who
Yeah.
and just seeing how you know maybe 6, 7, or 8 different companies hold ownership over pretty much everything else like it's just really interesting to see and this obviously plays right into it um,
Yeah. No, for
but
sure.
yeah,
It's just cool to see because those acquisitions, they can be one of the best investments for the company. Like you said, YouTube, that's one of the best ones ever. Um, or there are also times where like AT&T, they acquired like DirecTV for like 50 billion. Nobody
yep,
uses cable anymore. Nobody uses that. I mean, that was a terrible investment. So I think, I mean, Microsoft, they know what they're doing. Obviously, they wouldn't
agreed.
pay that big of a premium without doing the research, the future of gaming. Obviously, everybody knows them. So definitely exciting times, and we'll see what Microsoft has to do because they're right neck and neck with Apple being the largest company, and Microsoft's a little bit behind, but they're not that far off.
Right.
Um, so, well, I think that wraps it up for us tonight. Um, Another episode of Got Your Trade. I mean, it's definitely good getting back here, chopping it up for your awesome cruise coming up. So we know, hopefully, you have a blast. It's gonna be
Hell
fun.
yeah. Can't wait, man. But
Well
no, it's
deserved,
yeah, for sure. It's always good to take time away and, relax and kind of reset if you will.
for sure.
Gonna be good time with the family, but glad that, you're back and we got another episode in before I left. It was a great one. We obviously covered a ton of big topics. I mean, I feel like this might have been one of the first times where each one was kind of evenly split, which was really cool to see. That there's just so
For
much to
sure.
talk about right now with, each of the big three categories that we discuss on this show. But yeah, I mean that's gonna do it for the fourth episode. Again, you can, if you didn't catch it live, you can catch the video version of it on YouTube, or if you just want to hear the audio, you can catch that on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. I believe it might even be on Google Podcasts if that's something you listen to. But you just got to look up Got Your Trade. You'll find it. You'll see the first three episodes are already uploaded. The fourth one will be up sometime tomorrow. But we really appreciate anyone that stopped by during the live stream. We appreciate anyone that listens after the fact, and anyone that goes ahead and shares it with other people. That's huge for us. We'd love to have more and more people tuning in and stuff. But yeah, it's been another great episode, and can't wait for the next one. But that's going to do it for episode 4 of Got Your Trade.
Take care, guys. Thanks for watching. See you guys in the next one.